also known as Made in the Moment. Welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a little bit more of like just a casual video. So my plan for this video is to just do a couple like little beginning intro stuff, talk about some of my projects that I'm working on, and then I got a bunch of questions on Instagram, so I'll do a little Q&A while I work on my project. So it'll be like a little sit down and knit with me and listen to me talk about random stuff. I am making a commission for my friend Kendall. She's going to Boston Calling and she wanted a fun little outfit, so I'll show you. I'm going to insert a clip of my little sketch of what I'm working on, and that's what I'm going to be working on today. It's not going to be the most interesting thing to like see me doing because it's all black. She likes her basics. She wants like a cool black textured sort of loose knit thing, so that's what we're doing. But I thought, since like I mostly knit with colors and do all of that kind of stuff, I'll show you a couple of other things that I'm working on. The very first thing I want to show you is this knit sweater vest. So if you've been following me for a while, then you probably have seen my crochet version of this, but I have like really been on a knitting kick recently. I just think it's so fun, and I thought that the design would look really cool in knit. So I adapted it slightly. I still have to write the pattern, so it's gonna be a little while. I mean, I took some notes, but I didn't like really write the whole thing yet, so it's gonna be a little while before I do like a tester call or anything, but I'm hoping to have the pattern written in the next like week or so. So if you are interested in potentially testing this, then make sure you go and follow my Instagram to stay in the loop on all the updates for that. So yeah, that's what this looks like. I'll show you the wrong side because I think that's always fun to see. Of course, none of my ends are woven in yet. I probably should do that first, but I'd rather start a new project. Yeah, I think it's really fun to see the wrong side, to see the chaos. Another project that I'm still working on is the Rumble Raglan. I've made kind of a lot of progress on this actually since I last showed it. Pretty much this whole section right here I made while I was watching The Multiverse of Madness. I went to go see it and I just like can't sit still in movies. And thankfully, like if the movie is really dark, like Batman, the whole like color scheme of the movie was just very dark. It was nighttime all the time. So I brought a project with me to go see Batman and I just literally couldn't see. But this movie was there was a lot of outside scenes, a lot of like pretty bright lights and things like that. So I could see well enough. There were a couple times where I made a mistake, but I caught it pretty quickly and then I just went back and fixed it. So yeah, this is my progress on this shirt. I'm getting pretty close to the point where I add the bottom ribbing, and then all I have to do is pick up all of these stitches for the sleeves and knit some sleeves. But yeah, if you've been following along my journey with this, it was actually a test knit, which the pattern was released last week. I obviously didn't finish it in time, but I think this was a little bit of an ambitious project. I did end up having to like redo a whole section at the top. So probably, well no, I guess I'm not that close. I was gonna say if I had done that right the first time, then maybe I would have finished by the deadline. But yeah, I overcommitted. April was a really busy month for me with school. The other project I'm working on, I have also been working on this for a really long time. I started this at the beginning of April, and like I said, April just kind of caught up to me. But this is I'm calling it the Pink Lemonade Button Up. So at this point, I have like one of the sides joined. I just have to join the other sides, put some sleeves on it, and then add a collar. And I'll probably do sort of like incorporate some of the yellows into a border like around the edges of things for like a little button band thing. But yeah, I'm really excited with how this is turning out. I will also write a pattern for this eventually. I finished school yesterday. Yesterday was my last day of things. So now I have a lot of time, but I'm also trying to get a little rest and just kind of hang out and pace myself, honestly. I'm just gonna start off with a little swatch so I can decide what stitch I want to do and if these are the needles I want to use or if I want to use chunkier needles. Like I said, I just finished my semester and my summer is gonna be pretty chill. I'll be doing a lot of knitting, a lot of crocheting, pattern designing, that kind of stuff. I have some fun kind of collab-y things coming up. I maybe will open a few slots for commissions. So if anyone has anything that they are like dying to have me make, then I guess send me a message on Instagram and maybe you'll influence my decision to open up some slots or not. I had my commissions open for a while, like probably had them open for like 7 months, 8 months, like since I pretty much started crocheting or since I started like posting stuff on Instagram, I guess. And just with school, I got pretty burnt out from commissions, especially because people would sort of want this like similar things, or they would want something that was, you know, I would say yes to it and give them an estimate and then realize like, oh, this is gonna take a lot more creative energy and mental energy than I really allotted for. So it ended up just being kind of too much. But I'm really happy now, and I'm really lucky that people like my patterns. Like it's not lost on me that is a huge privilege. And every single time someone buys a pattern, I'm just so excited. So thank you, thank you for supporting me. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it's because of people who buy my patterns and I don't know, even just like follow me here that I can do any of this. So thank you. Sorry to get sappy, but yeah, I just hit my 1 year anniversary on Instagram of me posting on this account, which is crazy. In some ways, I can't believe it's already been a year, and in other ways, I can't believe it's only been a year. Like, that's pretty wild. Oh yeah, I was talking about my summer plans, and I kind of derailed myself, but my younger sister is graduating from high school, so I'm going to go visit my family and celebrate that. Yeah, so this commission that I'm working on, this is for my friend Kendall. She is a TikToker, and I met her actually through Hooked on Blue is their username. I'll like put their profile here, but we sort of connected through a mutual friend, and then they ended up pattern testing for me. They tested my Check Me Out vest, and it was really cool. They actually made 2 versions of the vest just during the pattern testing period. And then they ended up including the vest in their senior art thesis. And they did a model call on TikTok. And of course I responded. I was like, this would be really fun. Like, I'm not a model, but it's my design. And the concept was really cool too. They included all these phrases that were sort of based on experiences that women and like AFAB people in general, experiences and feelings that this kind of section of people have. And I'll show some of the pictures from the shoot here as well. But long story short, that's where I met Kendall, and we've sort of stayed in touch. We went thrifting together, and now I am making her this top, and I think I have figured out the stitch that I'm going to use for it. So I showed you my sketch for it earlier, but this is gonna be like impossible to see because it's black. Yeah, there's no way that you can see that. but I am doing the moss stitch or the seed stitch. I just like the texture that it has. I am so bad with swatches. I always knit them just for like a couple inches and then I unravel them. Because I feel like I'm wasting the yarn if I like knit a full swatch, and I feel like I'm wasting time. I'm just impatient, honestly. All right, let me figure out how many stitches I have to cast on and then I will answer some questions. Also, it's like randomly super hot today. It's been cold. I'm originally from California. That's where I spent most of my childhood growing up, whatever. And I just moved to Boston this year. And it's freezing. It's been cold since October. I don't even remember when it got cold, but it's been cold for a really long time. And I didn't think that it would be cold this long, honestly. So that's been an interesting adjustment. All right, let me answer some questions while I'm casting on. So the first question is, have any tips for newbie knitters? And the short answer is you're only going to get better if you practice and you get past the stage where it just feels terrible and like you don't know how to hold anything and you don't know what's going on. My grandma actually taught me how to knit when I was probably 10, and I made a few things. I think I made a bag and a little coin pouch and a few scarves, things like that. And so when I picked it back up recently, I sort of knew some of the basics. I really only ever learned knit and purl, and I didn't really figure out exactly how I liked to hold my yarn, things like that. But I feel like that helped make it a little easier to pick up. But honestly, my only advice is just keep at it. Watch lots of videos. There's so many great tutorials. If you don't like paying attention for like a whole YouTube video, there's so many people making great reels and TikToks of really short things. So you can probably search for like long tail cast on or how to knit, whatever. Something that I heard anecdotally and then kind of realized recently is that people who learn how to crochet first and then learn how to knit usually like to knit using like the continental style of knitting. So you can look up some videos on that, or I guess I could make a tutorial theoretically. But I just taught my friend Alana. Her username is Balls of Yarn. I taught her how to knit in like a couple hours, and she's a crocheter, so that ended up being the game changer for us, was realizing that she was going to tension her yarn the same way that she does for crochet and then do the like continental style of knitting. The next question is, when did you start crocheting? I first crocheted something in February of 2021. Yeah, so I've been crocheting for not quite a year and a half, a little over a year. And then I picked up knitting again kind of really seriously in October last year. So I guess, yeah, in that sense I've picked things up pretty fast, but I also really like to push myself. So, you know, if there's a pattern that I want to knit, then I'll just get it and I will knit it. Or, you know, if there's a technique that I want to learn in crochet, I will just learn how to do it. This person asks, what was your really first project? My very first project was, well, my first attempted project was one of Kelsey's like bralette patterns, and I thought it would be easy, and you know, since then I've actually followed some of her video patterns and they're very straightforward, they are very easy, but as like a very first project I was just so confused. I didn't even know what like stitches looked like, so I didn't know which stitch to increase in. I was just very confused. But after that, I started making granny squares, which was an interesting choice. And I actually made a pillowcase, which I have. Let me go grab it. Okay, so this is the pillow. I made all of these granny squares. It took me probably like a week. It took me a long time. But I made these granny squares. I figured out how to connect them. And then I realized that I hated making granny squares and connecting them. So I stopped pretty much until recently, where I got onto another granny square kick. But this is what this side looks like. And then the other side is, I think it looks worse. So, interesting color choices, kind of boring. Couple points for effort, like I chose a textured stitch, you know, I didn't just do regular single crochets or whatever. I don't actually remember what stitch this was. And then I added a little border around the edge. Honestly, not too bad. I actually use this pillow all the time. I like this side better. But yeah, this is one of my very first projects. And then I'll show you my first sweater that I ever made. I actually posted about this recently on Instagram, so you might have seen it. But this is what I made. I made this, I think after I couldn't figure out how to do the bralette, I was like, oh, maybe it'll be easier to make a sweater because it's like a big panel. By that point I could do all of the stitches, I just couldn't figure out like the increasing and decreasing that you need to do for a, well, I guess just increasing for a bralette cup. I started making just the sleeves. I think I was going to do white sleeves and a purple body, but then for some reason I just decided that I was going to do checkers, even though the video tutorial that I was following did not have any instructions on how to do that. I truly don't know like how I figured out how to change colors. I don't know. Like looking back on it, this is a pretty ambitious project. It's a little stiff. Like this is not really fabric-like. I think I used too small of a hook and my tension was too tight, but overall pretty good, not too bad. And yeah, it's a nice reminder of the early days of crocheting. Oh, and by the way, I'm knitting a 2x2 rib. This is going to be the part that like goes around the neck. So the next question, where do you get your inspo for your patterns? I think I'm inspired a lot by either colors or clothes that I have and like, or clothes that I think would be cool, but I haven't seen them before. I don't know, I feel like when anyone asks about inspiration, it's sometimes hard to pin down exactly where it comes from. I feel like the best way that I can describe it is just that I'm like very open to absorbing ideas. So if I'm walking around and I see a cool shape on a building or an interesting like pattern or something, then I will just kind of think about it and categorize it into the section of my brain that thinks about designing and patterns and things like that. And of course I try not to directly copy things, but I just sort of keep those ideas in my head. I also, something else I do in my design process is I will just sit down either while I'm like watching Netflix or when I was in school, like if I was trying to pass time in a class or something, I'll just sit down and force myself, well not force myself, that makes it sound bad, but I'll sit down and just draw out a bunch of ideas. And usually out of, if I make like 10 sketches, there's like one thing that I make, or there's 3 things that I like out of them, and then there's one that I end up actually making. So I think just drawing things or putting together little mood boards, idea boards, things like that, if that's something that you want to do. I don't know if I answered that question very well, but I feel like my inspiration is kind of scattered, so. Oh, and another thing that I do is I go through Pinterest, again, really not trying to like recreate things that are already made, but recently I've been pinning a lot of architecture and using different color combinations that I see in like buildings and things like that to inspire colors that I might want to use in my work. Next question is, what kind of research do you do? That is a great question. I feel like I talk rather ominously about my research and I don't always give a lot of specifics, but here is my little spiel about what I do outside of the knitting fiber arts community. My main thing is I go to grad school for vocal pedagogy and basically opera. So my degree is in vocal pedagogy, but I also do a lot of performing. And if you don't know, which you might not, vocal pedagogy is kind of a combination of how to teach singing and voice science and research about the voice. So that's what I'm doing when I'm not posting things and, you know, when I'm not just hanging out. And I just finished my very first year of my master's degree. It's a 2-year program, which is nice. It's pretty short. My research last semester was basically measuring the differences in breathing for singing when wearing a binder versus not wearing a binder. So like a, you know, gender affirming binder. Again, if you don't know, a lot of trans masc and just non-binary people in general like to bind their chest, either because they just like how it feels or it's a kind of gender euphoria thing. But yeah, when I was doing sort of a review of the voice science literature, I kind of knew that I wanted to do some sort of study looking at trans voices or trans singers, just because there's not a lot of research on that. I think that's a really important thing to be doing. And sort of in that preliminary like literature review, I basically found that there was almost no research in, of course, the voice community, but just in the medical community in general about the effects of binding, besides some sort of surveys. So that's what my research was on last semester, and then this semester I did some kind of boring system validation things where I just saw if the machines or the systems that I was using for my study last semester, basically like if it was measuring the airflow accurately. So yeah, that's my research. It's definitely really interesting and definitely different than what I do, but a cool thing nonetheless. Okay, the next question is from my friend Sakina, and Sakina asks, what do you hope will be the future of Made in the Moment? This is kind of a hard one. I definitely see myself continuing to write patterns for the time being, just because I love it so much. And I really want to make more YouTube videos. I've been having a lot of fun just kind of getting into that whole realm of video editing, and, you know, it's just another thing to try and be a perfectionist about, so that's fun. But yeah, definitely more pattern designing, and I'd love to kind of get into teaching knitting and crochet as well, you know, one-on-one or group sessions kind of thing. And then, of course, I'd love to consult with brands. I did my first, like, consultation with a fashion designer last month, and it was really fun. It's cool to just get to share the knowledge that I have accumulated, which I think also is why I'm thinking about teaching. But, you know, I'm not in a huge rush for any of that to happen, just sort of when opportunities arise. And then just kind of continuing to see where things take me. I never would have thought a year ago that I would be here now in the position that I am, getting to do all of the things that I'm doing. So I'm really just open to seeing kind of what happens next and where I go, and you know, who wants to work with me and things like that. But yeah, those are the things that really excite me about the future of Made in the Moment and my craft and designing and things like that. I got so many good questions, and I just don't think I'm gonna have time to answer them all because I think this video is already going to be pretty long. So I'll answer a few more, and the ones I don't get to, I will either make another video like this, or maybe I'll make a TikTok series or something like that, because there are a lot of really great questions. I don't know if I want this to be like an hour-long video. Also, I'm getting really sweaty. It's like super hot today. So, okay, here's a good one. What do you look for when choosing pattern testers? I usually try to be pretty upfront about this, like what I'm looking for. I like to choose people that have a crochet or knit account, and preferably if they have some good photos on there. And you know, what constitutes as a good photo is obviously not professional quality. I take all my pictures with my phone in my living room, you know. It's kind of just about, you know, are they taking pictures with good lighting and good angles? Do they seem to start projects and then finish them? Have they tested before? That's definitely, unfortunately, becoming something that I am kind of looking at when I look for pattern testers. I've had a lot of problems with people. You know, I'll get 100 applications for a pattern test. I go through every single person. I narrow it down to the people that I'm gonna have actually test the pattern. I send it out, and then I just get ghosted by people. My most recent patterns, not so much. People have been actually really good about finishing or just letting me know if something comes up. I am always really understanding, you know. I'm never gonna make someone pay for a pattern just because they don't finish the test. I just think that's unnecessary. But yeah, those are the main things that I look for. Just, do you have experience? Have you finished tests before? What do your pictures look like? So if you're trying to get chosen for a test, the only thing that I can say is just post some pictures of your work. And I really try not to only choose people for account size. I've actually found that bigger accounts are more likely to not finish the test just because they tend to have more like knitting, crochet responsibilities. They have more things that people are asking from them. You know, if they have their own patterns and, you know, if they do commissions, something like that. Whereas if there's a smaller account, it's more likely that they are going to actually finish the test. But yeah, recently for my last pattern test, I compensated all of my testers for the materials that they used. So at the end of the test, I just averaged out the amount of money that they spent and sent them a payment. That's something that I would love to keep doing, but it is pretty expensive, so I don't want to have to sacrifice the ability of my pattern to be tested by a lot of different sizes for kind of tester compensation. So that's something that I'm figuring out at the moment. Yeah, I did have the idea to do a Patreon and kind of use that as a tester fund, and I have just kind of not been good about promoting it, so I should do that. Okay, I think I'm gonna do one more question. Okay, I'm gonna end on this question. How is the crocheting/knitting community in Boston? And my answer is actually really great. I have met, like I talked about earlier, I have met several people in Boston. I obviously have met a lot of people online too, but I'm really hoping that in the summer we can do some crochet meetups and things like that. I've just been so swamped with school, I haven't even had time to think about that, but oh my god, I'm so sweaty. Okay, I lied. One more question. This person asks, how do you keep that many balls of yarn relatively untangled? I just don't. Like, I know there are a lot of ways to keep your project from, getting tangled, but I am just too, I don't know, I just don't want to do any of them. So I basically just work until my yarn is such a huge mess that I have to untangle it. Otherwise, I cannot go on. So then I'll spend the time kind of unwinding, untangling, doing whatever I have to do. But I don't know if there really is a better solution. Like if you're doing 2 or 3 colors, it's pretty easy to keep them separated how you want them to be, but anything other than that is kind of hard. Okay, I'm getting really sweaty. It's very warm in this room. I've been talking for a really long time. I'm gonna have a ton of clips to go through. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end. Leave a comment telling me what your favorite dinosaur is, and maybe I will make my next dinosaur pattern that dinosaur. All of my social media is linked down below if you want to find me anywhere. Like I said, my Patreon is a tester fund, so all of that money goes to testers and not to me. So if you want to support my Patreon, then you can do that. Let me know if you liked this kind of more casual, chill, longer video, and I'll see you next time.